Hello everyone. In this video, we'll be discussing one of the most commonly used JavaScript method, setTimeout. So you must be using setTimeout very frequently. But have you ever wondered if this function was not readily available, how would you implement your own implementation of setTimeout? Well, in this video, we'll be implementing same. So let's first look at what does setTimeout do. So basically, setTimeout is a method which takes a callback and then a delay, which is a time in milliseconds, and then it takes some params. So it will be calling this callback after this delay with these parameters, right? So basically, what setTimeout will do, it will call this callback with this parameter, but after this delay, right? So that's what setTimeout does. Now if we had to implement our own version of it, how we will do it, so let's see that. All right, so first let's create our skeleton. What we'll be doing, we'll have a function called my setTimeout. Okay, let's have a function, and then basically it returns a timer, right? And then we'll have another function which will be called my clear timeout. All right, it will be taking a timer as a parameter. Now my setTimeout will be taking a callback, delay, and then let's say it will be taking some argument, so let's call it argument, something like this. Now very first check we would do here is if type of callback, it should be function, right? So this should be function. So what we can do is, if it's not a function, we can just throw a error. Okay, so we'll throw a error saying callback should be a function. All right, this should be a function. Now let's see, what if that is a function. We need to essentially call this callback, right? So what we need to do, right? What we'll be doing is, since we need to return a timer, and every time this set time it is called, we need to return a timer. So what I'll do is I'll maintain a counter over here. Let's initialize with 0, and then I'll maintain a map for all the callbacks that needs to be executed. So I'll call it callbacks to be executed. Okay, so whenever this method is called, what I'll do is I'll increment the counters. So let's call it let current counter, and I'll increase this counter plus plus. And then what I'll do is I'll be storing the callback and this argument in this map. So here what I'll do is I'll store the callback. So this is the callback, and this needs to be called after certain interval. So that interval, that time should be actually date dot now plus this delay. Basically we will be calling this callback after this time, right? And then we'll also be storing the arguments along with which it needs to be called. So let's store it in an array. Okay, and then we'll be returning this counter over here. Okay, and what happens in clear timeout, basically here we will be just checking if this exists in this map. We will be simply deleting it. Okay, that's all. Now every time the setTimeout method will be called, we'll be storing it against a counter in this map, and when that time is lapsed we'll be actually calling this callback. So now we need a function which should continuously check this callbacks to be executed, and whenever it finds uh, that time has lapsed for any of the callback method, it should be immediately invoked. So let's implement a function for that. We'll call it process callbacks. And what it will do is it will go through all the methods which are stored in this callback. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll do object dot keys, and this will give me key, and then here I'll check if callback key dot time. Okay, now we need to check here if the current time, if that is greater than the time that we have stored in this callback to be executed map. That means the time has lapsed and now we can execute the method. So if the time has lapsed, we can just call the method. So I'll be actually destructuring this, and I'll be getting my callback and the argument, and we'll be just calling this callback with this arguments, right? So this looks good. Now what if the time has not lapsed yet, right? Then we need to keep checking, right? So we need to call this function again. But if I call this function again, and what will happen is if the time has not lapsed, it will keep calling this function recursively, right? If I just do like this, and that will actually block the main thread, and we do not want to do that. Hence what we'll be doing is we'll be using a method called request idle callback. What it does is it takes a callback and it will only call that callback when browser is idle, right? And that will help us not block the main thread. Okay, so and here I'll be passing this as a callback. So this should actually call this process callback only when the browser is idle. So and then what we'll do is we'll also go ahead and call this function for the very first time, so that it starts monitoring this callback to be executed. So I think we are done. We can test this. So let's test it. I'll be using my setTimeout now, and then I'll be passing a callback method to it called console log. Let's give it a timer of 1 second, and then I'll be passing some data. Let's call it data. Let's try to run it, and it prints data. Now let's clear the timer and see. So let's call it timer, and what we'll be doing is we'll be clearing out this one. So if I now run, we shouldn't be seeing data, so I'll clear it and now run it. So we don't see the data here. Now what we'll do is we'll create another set another timeout with something else. Let's call it something, and this should be called. So you can see this is getting printed. So this is how you can implement your own version of setTimeout. That's all for today. Please do let me know if you like the video, and if you want me to make video on any other topic, just let me know in the comment section. Thank you. Have a great day.